Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to jump into one really interesting week from November 2025. We're going to connect the dots between a big diplomatic move, a city's food scene getting global props, and a cricket legend calling it a day. Let's see how it all weaves together. So, a diplomatic shift, a food capital, and a cricket legend's goodbye. What in the world do they have in common? Well, they all happened in the very same week, giving us this incredible snapshot of our world in motion. We're going to dig in and see how these seemingly random stories are actually part of a much larger narrative. All right, let's kick things off with a major development in regional politics. This was a subtle but honestly a really significant shift in the relationship between India and Afghanistan. So in that very first week of November 2025, the Taliban regime made a pretty historic decision. They appointed their first official diplomat to India. This was a huge deal because it was the first move of its kind since they returned to power over 4 years earlier. To really get the weight of this moment, you kind of have to look at the backstory. I mean, after India pulled its diplomats out in August 2021, relations were basically on ice. But then, the groundwork for a change was laid just a month earlier, in October 2025, when Afghanistan's acting foreign minister actually visited India. That visit is what paved the way for this November announcement. Now, it's super important to understand that this was not a formal recognition of the Taliban government. Not at all. Instead, it's a perfect example of India's engagement without recognition policy. Think of it as a diplomatic middle path, a way to keep humanitarian aid moving and to keep those lines of communication open. It's a really significant, even if it's informal, shift. Okay, so now let's zoom out from that regional story and head to the global stage. Because during that exact same week, nations from all over the world were getting together to work on some shared challenges. From November 4th to the 6th, leaders gathered in Doha, Qatar for the Second World Summit for Social Development. And India was there, represented by Dr. Mansukh Mandavia, who was there to share the country's progress on the social and economic front. So what was on the agenda? Well, it was pretty ambitious. The first big goal was to recommit to the Copenhagen Declaration, which is a really foundational pledge for social development. The second was to hit the accelerator on the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. The whole thing was backed by the UN, really trying to rally a collective global push for a better future. And, it's pretty fitting that the last day of the summit, November 6th, happened to be this really important UN observance, a day dedicated to preventing the exploitation of the environment in war. It's just a powerful reminder that the true cost of conflict goes way, way beyond the battlefield. All right, let's shift gears now. We're moving from global diplomacy to some fantastic celebrations happening right at home. This part of the week was all about honoring culture, community, and the amazing contributions of individuals. This is huge news, especially if you're a foodie. At the 43rd UNESCO General Assembly, Lucknow was officially named a Creative City of Gastronomy. This is a massive international honor, and it made Lucknow only the second city in India to get it, right after Hyderabad. So, what earned them this incredible title? Well, it was the city's legendary Awadhi cuisine. I mean, we are talking about kebabs that just melt in your mouth, biryanis that are unbelievably fragrant, and these slow-cooked dishes that have been perfected over centuries. It's a global shout-out to a really unique and cherished piece of India's cultural heritage. Then, on November 3rd, the spotlight moved over to Guwahati for another amazing cultural celebration, the Bharat Ratna Dr. Bhupen Hazarika National Award. It's named for a true cultural icon who was all about national unity, and the award itself honors artists who are strengthening the identity of Northeast India. And recognition wasn't just for famous artists. On November 2nd, the State Bank of India launched SBI Star, which is this fantastic initiative to honor its own employees. The whole idea, which this quote just captures perfectly, is to see them as whole persons who contribute to society way beyond their day jobs. It's such a great example of celebrating well-rounded people in the workplace. Okay, for our final section, we're going to look at two very different but very human stories, the end of an era in sports and a nationwide push for health awareness. On November 2nd, the cricket world had to say goodbye to a modern-day great. Kane Williamson, the former New Zealand captain, announced he was retiring from T20 international cricket. Just like that, closing the book on an absolutely incredible 14-year career in that format. And his numbers, they really do speak for themselves. In just 93 matches, he scored over 2,500 runs. And to put that into perspective for you, he retired as New Zealand's second highest run scorer of all time in T20 internationals. Just a truly legendary career. But here's a number that, for me, tells an even bigger story than just his batting. 75. Out of his 93 matches, that's how many times he was the captain for New Zealand. It just shows his immense role not just as a player, but as a leader who really defined an entire era for his team. Then, on November 7th, the focus shifted to public health with National Cancer Awareness Day. And here's a really amazing bit of trivia for you. The date was chosen specifically because it's the birthday of the pioneering scientist Madame Curie, whose research on radioactivity was absolutely fundamental for developing modern cancer treatments. Because really, at the end of the day, it's all about spreading vital information. It's a nationwide effort to educate everyone on how to recognize symptoms, understand the causes, and most importantly, embrace the life-saving power of prevention and getting screened early. So there you have it, one single week, a diplomatic handshake, a global summit, a city's culinary pride, a new award, and a legend's farewell. Each one is its own moment, but when you put them all together, they pose a pretty compelling question. How do all these separate threads, from politics, culture, and personal stories, weave together to write the bigger history of our world? Thanks for joining me.